Hey, Matt, thanks for joining me. Can you tell us more about your role at Team Car Care?
Sure. Matt Castonguay, CFO at Team Car Care. We're the largest franchisee of Jiffy Lubes with over 450 locations all throughout the US, and been here 6 years.
Matt, can you tell us more about the financial organization today?
Sure. So Team Car Care has an accounting team that's about 16 people. So not a huge team. A fair portion of that is AP. In the GL function, as well as AP and all the teams, they're dealing with a really high volume of transactions, tens of thousands per day for everyone. And so that multiplies pretty quickly by month end.
Of course, how many entities?
Six
entities. And how many kind of Jiffy Lube places do you
450.
450.
Yeah.
Wow. Across all the nation.
All over the nation, yeah.
Wow.
So not one state. Yeah.
That's super interesting. And can you tell us about kind of the evolution? Like you're 16 people, and I'm sure that you've seen growth in the past, few years. So as the business is growing, obviously your work is being kind of more under pressure. How do you deal with that today?
For us, we transitioned from a pretty old implementation of a financial system with lots of homegrown applications around it. And in 2022, we transitioned to Workday, and that helped create more automation than what we had before. And then in addition, it really comes also down to hiring talent that can handle large data sets in the accounting function, which is pretty hard to find.
When you think about using AI in the finance function, do you see it as a strategic advantage? Do you see it as something that is going to change the people who are going to hire? Like, how do you perceive kind of this new world that we're in? AI is everywhere, but we see from our end a lot of things that are changing because of AI. Even the role of the CFO kind of changes because of this kind of new transition. And I wonder what is your stance about it?
For us, I kind of see it as bifurcated in the sense that you need someone who's really focused on getting the applications up and running, driving the buy-in. And then the people who are executing it, actually, you have a more broad talent pool to go and execute the models than when you're trying to do it manually.
And when you hire like a new team member, is understanding or familiarity with AI is a requirement today?
It's not necessarily a requirement in the sense that they have specific use cases they've applied before.
Right.
To me, they have to be open to using a primary tool set to do their job.
I think when we first met, or your first introduction to Nominal was really around a lot of transactional work. Can you maybe elaborate more on that?
So for us, one of the most manual areas was around inventory reconciliation. So for example, our point of sale and our ERP are not bi-directional communication. What comes in could be good, could be bad, and we have to reconcile it based on what comes in from the actual activity at the store level. So for example, if a store receives 6 cases, but they only see 5, and they check in 5 cases, that gets posted. And then the invoice comes in for 6.
Right.
So they don't tie out. Well, then a few days later, they find that 6th case, and then they load it, and then now you have 1 with no invoice.
Right.
And so the reconciliation for us was about identifying where that 5 and the 1, tying it to the 6, marrying them together to reconcile. And if you can't figure it out, then posting a journal entry to true it up.
Yeah, 100%. Because at the end of the day, what's really interesting about accounting and finance is that it basically shows the real status of the business. It kind of portrays a picture of the business. And if the data is not wrong, then the data that you show decision makers is incorrect.
Yeah.
That's why we look at AI and automation and the impact that we bring to our customers as a competitive advantage. So I wonder for you, Matt, what was the impact of Nominal? How do you use the system today? How was the agent implementation and engagement and the impact that we created?
So we started implementing about a year ago. Initially, the focus was primarily on data and getting the right data sets pulled together to pull into Nominal. Once we were able to get that established as a baseline, we spent time building out the model and figuring out how do we replicate the logic of the manual work into an AI agent.
Right.
And that took a few months, and we went live in fall of 2025. The tool has taken us from 0 to about 70%, and we still are continuing to refine it to improve the success rate of the automation. It's also gotten to a point now where the accountant that was doing this actually got promoted to run the GL team. He doesn't have the time to do this old job and his new job. And hiring the backfill for that initially was difficult because we were trying to replicate what he brought to the table. But then we took a different turn and said, well, what's the actual role now with the automation? And we were able to take someone else who added to their plate, promote them, and now a non-accountant is actually the one doing the role.
Right.
So they're the ones reconciling, they're the ones building the journal entries, submitting it to Jimmy and team to make sure that it gets posted correctly.
Awesome. So basically what we did at Team Car Care is really deploying deterministic agents. And now your employees do strategic work and not low leverage work. And, instead of like reconciling, they are supervising agents that reconcile for them. So instead of doing the work, they're just supervising the work of an agent.
And making sure it's done correctly and spending time talking to the stores and getting them to correct their behaviors.
Right.
Not just coming over top of them with entries without fixing the root cause.
One more question that I have is, where do you see other use cases of AI within the Workday system?
So another area that we're working with them is they've got a new agent on the adaptive planning side,
right,
where they just announced it yesterday, actually. We're working with them to help refine it in early access. And it's a tool that really can listen to your core financials with the structure and security that comes with adaptive, but allow you to use free text in an LLM to build board slides, to build charts, to create a financial analysis, not just on an ad hoc basis, but also with templates that allow you to create it over and over again, which is a big thing for FP&A.
Right. It's interesting, something that we've seen again and again with our customers, that there is kind of a misperception in our industry, right, as an AI vendor, of companies that are in, quote unquote, unsexy industries. What we find is those industries are often the first to adopt AI, whether it's in GL, AP. So it's really interesting because sometimes those kind of fancy tech companies are left behind. Yeah. And what we found out really is that those CFOs and business leaders like yourself actually create competitive advantage by closing the book faster, running in, what we call lean team, fat margins, right? The fact that you can close the book faster, get better decisions with adaptive, reconcile with nominal, just creates, from what we've seen in our customer base, just a competitive advantage across the board.
Yeah, I was at a technology before this and made the decision to move to a non-technology business and drive this transformation with them. And you have a lot of transactions that create opportunity. And it's been a lot of fun at Team Car Care working with the team to figure out how do we take different technologies and apply them to a blue-collar brick-and-mortar business.
100%. Building on what you said, what do you think finance is heading to in the next 5 years?
That's a big question. I think some of the small elements that we see today with co-work, with Claude, for example, I see that moving into the mainstream applications, like what we've done with Nominal, where it's integrated directly. Accounting and finance is slower to move sometimes because of SOX requirements, because, the level of accountability, me personally included, where my name is on those numbers. I have to be able to trust them. And so over the next 5 years, I expect we continue a rapid acceleration. What we've seen in AI development in the LLM side is a start. But on the application side within accounting and finance, continuing the specific applications development that allow us to take that manual work, automate the manual work, so we can spend time on audit, spend time talking to stores, spend time servicing our guests.
Yeah, 100%. Like we, as a tech company, we see the same thing. I used to write code. I started my career as writing code and developing software. However, today at Nominal, no one writes code. So what we've seen is that developers using agents to write their code, Cloud Code, Codex, and other vendors that we use. However, they supervise the agents to make sure that we are also being audited. We're software compliant. We need to make sure that we work with public companies, so we have a certain bar that we need to meet. What we see is that this kind of workflow of humans supervise agents is going to be something that is going to translate really well from software development to other areas like accounting. We see it in legal, we see it in customer service. So we see this kind of, humans are going to still be in the loop. However, they're going to supervise agents to perform the work. So the work performance, the low level work is going to be done by agents. However, the strategy will be dictated by humans. And we're going to
you still need to be a finance expert. You still need to be a programming expert. You can't supervise without that expertise.
100%. Yeah. What advice would you give to CFOs and finance leaders who are more hesitant to adopt AI, given everything that we said, right? Like it's a new technology. And at the end of the day, you're basically signing the numbers, right?
Yeah. Hey, look, we're a mid-market business, $500 million in sales, not a huge back office, lots of employees to support. And we started working on figuring out, all right, how do we use agents about a year and a half ago? And this is before we knew about Nominal. Yeah. And when we were going through it, it's like, well, there's lots of things we can try to solve, but what are the real pain point use cases that you can narrow down to and say, how do I solve this one problem? Like the inventory reconciliation one, where it's a really big problem in terms of the amount of work, but it's narrow in the sense of what the scope is. And that, I think, was a good start for us. We've had several other agents we've tried to deploy, still not in production. We're still testing and we're still refining, but the ability for you to just get started, like with many technologies, is key for us to be able to get ahead of the game.
Well, thank you so much. Really, it was a pleasure. Thank you.